The arrival. General Zaxthor of the Galactic Confederation stepped off his sleek interstellar cruiser, his four eyes blinking rapidly to adjust to Earth's harsh sunlight. The spaceport bustled with activity, a cacophony of sounds and smells assaulting his senses. He straightened his ceremonial armor, adorned with badges of countless victorious campaigns across the stars. "Welcome to Earth, General Zaxthor." A human in a crisp military uniform greeted him. "I'm Colonel Sarah Chen. We're honored to host you for this weapons demonstration." Zaxthor nodded, his translator implant converting his clicks and whistles into human speech. "The honor is mine, Colonel. I look forward to witnessing the might of Earth's arsenal." As they walked towards a waiting transport, Zaxthor's gaze swept over the spaceport. He frowned, noticing the lack of advanced technology he'd expected from a species that had recently joined the Galactic Confederation. Where were the gravity lifts? The neural interface terminals? Even the vehicles looked primitive. "Is something wrong, General?" Colonel Chen asked, noticing his hesitation. "Not at all," Zaxthor replied smoothly. "I'm merely taking in the sights." They boarded a ground vehicle, a Humvee, Colonel Chen called it, and set off towards the military base. Zaxthor's unease grew as they left the spaceport behind. The cityscape they drove through was a far cry from the gleaming metropolises of other Confederation worlds. Buildings of varying heights and styles stood side by side, a chaotic mishmash of architecture that seemed to follow no discernible pattern. "Your world is quite diverse," Zaxthor commented diplomatically. Colonel Chen chuckled. "That's one way to put it. Earth's never been one for uniformity, General. We like our variety." As they approached the military base, Zaxthor's anticipation grew. Surely here, in the heart of Earth's defense forces, he would see the advanced weaponry that had allowed humans to repel the fearsome Krax invasion just a few years ago. The tales of that conflict had spread throughout the galaxy, speaking of Earth's incredible resilience and ingenuity in the face of overwhelming odds. The Humvee passed through several checkpoints before coming to a stop in front of a nondescript building. Colonel Chen led Zaxthor inside, where they were met by a grizzled human male with numerous scars crisscrossing his face. "General Zaxthor, meet Sergeant Major Jack O'Neill. He'll be conducting today's weapons demonstration." O'Neill extended a hand, which Zaxthor stared at for a moment before remembering the human custom of shaking hands. He grasped O'Neill's hand carefully, mindful of his own superior strength. "Pleasure to meet you, General," O'Neill said, his voice rough. "Ready to see what Earth brings to the galactic table?" Zaxthor nodded eagerly. "Indeed, I've heard much about Earth's unconventional approach to warfare. I'm most curious to see it firsthand." O'Neill's scared face broke into a grin that sent a shiver down Zaxthor's spine. "Oh, you're in for a treat, sir. Follow me." They walked through a series of corridors, each requiring higher levels of security clearance. Zaxthor's excitement mounted with each door they passed. Finally, they reached a massive vault door, easily a meter thick. "This," O'Neill announced with pride, "is where we keep the good stuff." The door swung open with a hiss of compressed air, revealing a dimly lit room filled with what appeared to be junk. Zaxthor blinked all four eyes in confusion. There were no sleek energy weapons, no powered armor suits, not even a basic plasma rifle. Instead, the room was cluttered with an assortment of everyday objects: gardening tools, kitchen utensils, sports equipment, and what looked like primitive projectile weapons. "There must be some mistake," Zaxthor said, unable to keep the disappointment from his voice. "Where are your advanced weapons?" O'Neill picked up what appeared to be a cylindrical metal container with a lever on top. "Right here, General. This here's a fire extinguisher. In the right hands, it's as deadly as any plasma rifle." Zaxthor stared at the object, then at O'Neill, waiting for the joke. But the human's scared face remained serious. "You can't be serious," Zaxthor finally managed. This is primitive technology. How could this possibly stand against advanced weaponry?" Colonel Chen stepped forward. General, I understand your confusion. But I assure you, what you're about to witness will change everything you think you know about warfare. O'Neill nodded, his eyes glinting with a mix of pride and something else, something that made Zaxthor distinctly uncomfortable. That's right, sir. By the time we're done here, you'll understand why Earth is called a Deathworld, and why our enemies learn to fear us, no matter what weapons we're holding. Zaxthor looked around the room again, his mind racing. This had to be some kind of mistake or elaborate ruse. How could these primitive objects be the source of Earth's legendary combat prowess? Yet as he met the eyes of the two humans before him, he saw no deception there. Only a quiet confidence that spoke of battles won against impossible odds. For the first time since arriving on Earth, General Zaxthor felt a flicker of genuine fear. What kind of species could turn such simple objects into weapons of war? And what would it mean for the balance of power in the galaxy if others learned to do the same? As O'Neill began to explain the various weapons around them, Zaxthor realized that his mission to Earth was going to be far more enlightening and potentially terrifying than he could have ever imagined. The demonstration hadn't even begun, and already he was questioning everything he thought he knew about warfare and the nature of true strength in the universe. Little did he know, this was only the beginning of a journey that would challenge his perceptions, test his limits, and ultimately reshape his understanding of what it truly means to be a warrior in a vast and unpredictable galaxy. Unconventional arsenal. General Zaxthor's antennae twitched nervously as Sergeant Major O'Neill led him through the cluttered room. The human's scared hands moved from object to object, each explanation more bewildering than the last. This here, O'Neill said, hefting a long metal tube with a curved end, we call a crowbar. Great for prying things open. But in a pinch, it's a nasty melee weapon. Zaxthor's inner eyelids blinked rapidly. But it's a tool. How can it compete with energy weapons or force fields? O'Neill's grin widened. That's the beauty of it, General. Our enemies expect high-tech gadgets. They don't expect to get clocked upside the head with a piece of construction equipment. Colonel Chen chimed in, her voice calm but tinged with pride. Surprise is a powerful weapon, General, and humans excel at being unpredictable. As they moved deeper into the room, Zaxthor's confusion only grew. O'Neill picked up a small canister with a nozzle on top. This little beauty, spray paint, seems harmless, right? O'Neill shook the can, the metallic rattling echoing in the room. But spray it in someone's eyes or ignite it with a spark, and you've got yourself a makeshift flamethrower. Zaxthor's exoskeleton paled slightly. You weaponize everything. Not everything, Chen corrected. But we can adapt almost anything to serve a combat purpose if necessary. O'Neill nodded, moving to a shelf lined with various bottles and jars. Take these household chemicals. Individually, they're for cleaning or cooking. Mix them right, though. He trailed off, letting the implication hang in the air. The alien general felt a chill run down his spine. The casual way these humans discussed turning everyday items into weapons of war was deeply unsettling. In his vast military experience, he had never encountered a species so resourceful. But surely, Zaxthor protested, these improvised weapons can't stand up to proper military equipment. O'Neill's scared face grew serious. General, let me tell you a story. During the Krax invasion, my unit was cut off behind enemy lines. We'd lost most of our gear in an ambush. All we had left were the clothes on our backs and whatever we could scavenge from a nearby town. Zaxthor leaned in, his four eyes fixed on O'Neill's face. We were outnumbered, outgunned, and cornered in an old factory. The Krax thought they had us dead to rights. But they didn't count on human ingenuity. O'Neill's voice took on a grim tone. We turned that factory into a death trap. Improvised explosives made from cleaning supplies. Traps rigged from machinery parts. We even weaponized the ventilation system to spread caustic fumes. Chen picked up the story. By the time reinforcements arrived, Sergeant Major O'Neill's team had not only held off the Crack's assault, but had inflicted severe casualties, using nothing but improvised weapons and quick thinking. Zaxthor's mind reeled. The story defied conventional military logic, yet he could sense no deception from either human. How? How is this possible? O'Neill shrugged. Necessity, General. Humans have a knack for surviving against the odds. We've been doing it since before we left our caves. As they continued through the room, O'Neill demonstrated more bizarre weapons. A simple length of rope became a garrote or tripwire. A common writing pen transformed into a stabbing implement. Even a child's toy, a so-called super soaker, was explained as a potential delivery system for corrosive liquids. But what about your actual military technology? Zaxthor asked, still struggling to reconcile what he was seeing with Earth's reputation as a formidable military power. Chen smiled. Oh, we have those too, General. But our true strength lies in our adaptability. Our official weapons are just tools. It's the human mind and spirit that make them truly dangerous. O'Neill nodded in agreement. That's right. Any species can build a bigger gun, but it takes a special kind of crazy to look at a rubber band and see a weapon. As if to demonstrate, O'Neill picked up a thick rubber band and a small metal projectile. With practiced ease, he stretched the band between his thumb and forefinger, loaded the projectile, and fired. The small object whizzed past Zaxthor's head, embedding itself in a wooden target on the far wall with a solid thunk. Zaxthor jumped, his exoskeleton rattling slightly. Impressive accuracy, he admitted, trying to hide his unease. That's nothing, O'Neill said, his voice low. You should see what we can do with a slingshot and some ball bearings. Taken down crack skimmers with those. The alien general's mind was spinning. Everything he thought he knew about warfare was being challenged. The humans didn't just think outside the box. They seemed unaware that the box even existed. But how do you train for this? Zaxthor asked, gesturing at the eclectic array of improvised weapons. How do you standardize tactics? Chen's expression turned serious. We don't, not entirely. We train our soldiers to think creatively, to assess their environment, and to use whatever is at hand. It's not about memorizing a manual, it's about cultivating a mindset. O'Neill nodded. Exactly. Every human is potentially a weapon maker. It's in our DNA, a legacy from when we had to survive against predators with nothing but our wits and some sharpened sticks. Zaxthor felt a newfound respect, tinged with a healthy dose of fear growing within him. He had come to Earth expecting to see advanced technology. Instead, he was witnessing something far more terrifying. A species that could turn the very environment against their enemies. I begin to understand, Zaxthor said slowly, why Earth is classified as a death world. It's not just the planet itself that's dangerous. It's you, your people. Chen and O'Neill exchanged a look, a silent communication passing between them. You're starting to get it, General, Chen said. But we're just getting started. Are you ready to see how we put all this into practice? Zaxthor hesitated, his alien features contorting in a mix of anticipation and apprehension. Part of him wanted to end this demonstration now, to return to the comfortable certainties of conventional warfare. But a larger part, the part that had driven him to become a general, burned with curiosity. I am ready, he said finally, straightening his posture. O'Neill's scared face broke into another unsettling grin. Excellent. Follow me, sir. It's time to show you how we really fight on Earth. As they left the cluttered room behind, heading towards what O'Neill called the simulation chamber, Zaxthor couldn't shake the feeling that he was about to witness something that would change not just his perspective, but the entire balance of power in the galaxy. The humans, with their bizarre mix of primitive tools and unorthodox thinking, were proving to be far more dangerous than he had ever imagined. And they were just getting started. Adaptive warfare. The simulation chamber turned out to be a cavernous room, easily the size of a small spacecraft hangar. As General Zax Thor entered, his compound eyes struggled to take in the chaotic scene before him. The space was filled with a bewildering array of obstacles, structures, and scattered objects that seemed to have no rhyme or reason. "Welcome to the playground," Sergeant Major O'Neill announced, his voice echoing in the vast space. "This is where we really put our adaptive warfare techniques to the test." Colonel Chen gestured around the room. "The layout and available objects change for each simulation. It forces our soldiers to think on their feet, to use whatever they find in creative ways." Zax Thor's antennae twitched nervously. "And what exactly happens in these simulations?" O'Neill's scared face broke into a grin that sent a shiver down the alien general's spine. "War games, sir, but with a uniquely human twist." Before Zax Thor could ask for clarification, a klaxon blared throughout the chamber. Suddenly, from various points around the room, human soldiers in nondescript gray uniforms emerged. They moved with purpose, quickly assessing their surroundings and grabbing seemingly random objects as they went. "Watch closely, General," Chen said, her voice low. "You're about to see why Earth's combat doctrine is so feared across the galaxy." The simulation unfolded with dizzying speed. Zax Thor watched in awe and growing unease as the human soldiers transformed the cluttered environment into a battlefield. A group near the center used office furniture to construct a makeshift barricade, reinforcing it with sheets of metal they'd pried from a nearby wall. "Improvised fortifications," O'Neill explained. "You'd be surprised how effective a flipped desk can be against energy weapons." On the far side of the room, another team had commandeered what looked like cleaning equipment. To Zax Thor's astonishment, they were using the long handles of mops and brooms to create a primitive but effective phalanx formation. "Adaptability in action," Chen commented. "Those cleaning tools just became spears and shields." The alien general's mandibles clicked in agitation. But this is primitive. How can such tactics stand against advanced weaponry?" O'Neill's expression turned grim. "Because, General, our enemies are often too reliant on their tech. They don't expect a mop handle to the face when they're busy fiddling with their targeting systems." As if to demonstrate this point, the simulation ramped up. Holographic projectors flickered to life, filling the chamber with the image of an alien invasion force, one that bore a striking resemblance to Zax Thor's own species. The human soldiers reacted instantly. Those behind the barricade produced makeshift slings, using them to hurl a barrage of small, hard objects at the holographic invaders. Zax Thor realized with a start that they were using nuts, bolts, and other pieces of hardware as ammunition. "Doesn't look like much," O'Neill said, noting the general's skeptical expression. "But fling one of those at supersonic speeds, and it'll punch through most personal shields like they're not even there." In another corner of the room, a soldier had rigged up what appeared to be a simple pulley system using ropes and metal pipes. With a series of quick movements, they launched a volley of larger projectiles, pieces of broken concrete and metal, arcing high over the battlefield. "Improvised artillery," Chen explained. "Crude, but effective for area denial and breaking up enemy formations." Zax Thor watched in growing disbelief as the human soldiers continued to demonstrate their adaptability. They used aerosol cans and lighters to create impromptu flamethrowers, turned power tools into devastating melee weapons, and even employed common electronics to jam enemy communications. This is madness," Zax Thor finally managed to say, his alien features contorted in a mix of awe and horror. O'Neill nodded solemnly. "Madness to our enemies, maybe. To us, it's survival. Humanity has always been outnumbered and outgunned throughout our history. We've had to learn to use everything at our disposal just to stay alive." As the simulation reached its climax, Zax Thor witnessed a particularly ingenious tactic. A group of soldiers had created a crude but effective Tesla coil using scavenged electrical components. When activated, it sent arcs of electricity dancing across the battlefield, disrupting the holographic enemy's energy weapons and shields. Electromagnetic warfare, Chen said proudly. Turns out, a lot of advanced tech doesn't like good old-fashioned lightning. The klaxon sounded again, signaling the end of the simulation. The human soldiers gathered in the center of the room, many of them grinning and clapping each other on the back despite their exertion. Zaxthor turned to his hosts, his mind reeling from what he had just witnessed. I don't understand. How can you possibly train for this level of chaos? O'Neill's scared face softened slightly. That's just it, General. We don't train for specific scenarios. We train our people to think, to adapt, to see the potential in everything around them. Chen nodded in agreement. Our greatest weapon isn't any piece of technology or equipment. It's the human mind coupled with our indomitable will to survive. As they left the simulation chamber, Zaxthor found himself reevaluating everything he thought he knew about warfare. The humans' approach was chaotic, unpredictable, and utterly terrifying in its effectiveness. I begin to understand, he said slowly, why the Krax invasion failed. They were prepared for a conventional war, weren't they? O'Neill's grin returned, fiercer than ever. That's right, sir. They came expecting an easy victory over a primitive species. Instead, they found themselves fighting an entire planet of crazed monkeys who could turn anything into a weapon. Chen placed a hand on Zaxthor's shoulder, a gesture that would have been comforting if not for the steel in her eyes. And that, General, is why Earth is considered a Deathworld. Not just because of our planet's natural dangers, but because of what those dangers have shaped us into. As they walked back towards the main part of the facility, Zaxthor felt a profound shift in his understanding of the galaxy's balance of power. The humans, with their bizarre mix of primitive ingenuity and adaptive thinking, were far more dangerous than any high-tech army he had ever encountered. And he couldn't shake the feeling that this demonstration was just the tip of the iceberg. What other surprises did these unpredictable Deathworlders have in store? The ultimate test. General Zaxthor's mind was still reeling from the demonstrations he had witnessed as Colonel Chen and Sergeant Major O'Neill led him to a new area of the facility. The corridor they traversed was stark and utilitarian, a far cry from the sleek, advanced passages of Galactic Confederation installations. General, Chen began, her tone serious. What you've seen so far has been impressive, I'm sure. But it's all been carefully controlled demonstrations. O'Neill nodded, his scared face set in a grim expression. That's right. Now it's time for you to experience the real thing. Zaxthor's antennae twitched nervously. What do you mean, the real thing? They came to a stop before a heavy metal door. Chen turned to face the alien general, her eyes glinting with a mixture of challenge and anticipation. We believe that to truly understand Earth's combat doctrine, you need to experience it firsthand, she explained. Behind this door is what we call the Crucible. It's our most advanced combat simulation chamber. O'Neill grinned, a gesture that Zaxthor was beginning to associate with impending danger. Think of it as a final exam, General. A chance to put everything you've learned to the test. Zaxthor's exoskeleton paled slightly. You want me to participate in one of your simulations? Chen nodded. That's correct. Don't worry, it's perfectly safe. The environment is fully controlled, and the enemies are holographic projections. But the challenges, those are very real. The alien general hesitated. Part of him wanted to refuse, to retreat to the safety of his ship and the familiar confines of conventional warfare. But a larger part, the part that had driven him to become a leader of the Galactic Confederation's military, was intrigued. Very well, he said finally, straightening to his full height. I accept your challenge. O'Neill's grin widened. That's the spirit, sir. Now, let's get you geared up. To Zaxthor's surprise, the gear consisted of little more than a simple jumpsuit and a pair of sturdy boots. No weapons, no armor, no advanced technology of any kind. But how am I supposed to defend myself? He asked, looking down at his decidedly non-martial attire. Chen's expression was serious, but there was a glint of amusement in her eyes. That's part of the challenge, General. You'll have to use what you find inside, just like our soldiers do in real combat situations. As they approached the entrance to the Crucible, O'Neill gave Zaxthor a final briefing. The simulation will last for 30 minutes. Your objective is simple. Survive. Use anything and everything you can find in there. Remember, in real combat, there are no rules except survival. With a hiss of hydraulics, the massive doors slid open. Zaxthor took a deep breath, steadying himself, then stepped into the unknown. The first thing that struck him was the chaos. The Crucible was a maze-like environment, filled with obstacles, debris, and scattered objects of all kinds. It reminded him of the cluttered weapons storage room, but on a much larger scale. Before he could fully take in his surroundings, a klaxon blared. Red lights began flashing, and a computerized voice announced, "Hostile forces detected. Prepare for engagement." Zaxthor's military training kicked in. He quickly ducked behind a nearby overturned table, his eyes scanning for potential weapons. He spotted a length of metal pipe and grabbed it, hefting its weight experimentally. Suddenly, holographic projectors flickered to life. The air filled with the snarling forms of what Zaxthor recognized as Crack's warriors, their energy weapons glowing ominously. The alien general's first instinct was to retreat, to find a defensive position and wait for reinforcements. But he quickly realized that wasn't an option here. He was alone, outgunned, and in unfamiliar territory, just like the humans had been during the real Crack's invasion. With that thought, something clicked in Zaxthor's mind. He began to see his surroundings not as debris and junk, but as potential resources. The metal pipe in his hands wasn't just a crude club. It was a multi-purpose tool that could be used for attack, defense, or leverage. As the first holographic cracks charged towards him, Zaxthor surprised himself by going on the offensive. He swung the pipe in a wide arc, watching with satisfaction as it passed through the hologram, causing it to flicker and dissipate. But there was no time to celebrate. More cracks were coming, their energy weapons charging with an ominous hum. Zaxthor's 4 eyes darted around, looking for anything he could use. He spotted a fire extinguisher mounted on a nearby wall. Remembering O'Neill's earlier demonstration, he grabbed it and unleashed a cloud of suppressant at the advancing holograms. To his amazement, the cloud disrupted the projectors, causing the Crack's images to waver and distort. As the simulation progressed, Zaxthor found himself thinking and acting in ways he never had before. He used a rolled-up carpet as a makeshift shield against energy blasts. He created distractions by throwing small objects to trigger the holographic sensors. At one point, he even managed to rig up a crude tripwire using computer cables, causing a group of pursuing Cracks to stumble and disperse. Time seemed to blur as Zaxthor fully immersed himself in the challenge. He was no longer just surviving. He was adapting, improvising, overcoming. For the first time, he began to truly understand the human approach to warfare. When the klaxon finally sounded again, signaling the end of the simulation, Zaxthor was crouched behind a barricade he had constructed from office furniture, wielding a makeshift spear crafted from a broom handle and sharpened metal scraps. As the lights came up and the holograms faded away, the alien general realized he was breathing heavily, his exoskeleton covered in sweat. But there was also an unfamiliar sensation coursing through him: exhilaration. The doors slid open, revealing Colonel Chen and Sergeant Major O'Neill. Both humans wore expressions of approval and something that looked like respect. "Well done, General," Chen said, her voice filled with genuine admiration. "You adapted faster than any other non-human we've put through the Crucible." O'Neill nodded, his scared face set in a grin. "Gotta say, sir, I was impressed. Especially that bit with the fire extinguisher. Creative thinking there." Zaxthor straightened up, suddenly aware of how disheveled he must look. But for once, he didn't care about maintaining a dignified appearance. He felt changed. I think I understand now," he said slowly, his translator struggling to convey the complex emotions in his voice. This isn't just about weapons or tactics. It's a completely different way of thinking about combat. Chen's expression turned serious. That's exactly right, General. Earth's greatest weapon isn't any piece of technology. It's our adaptability, our creativity under pressure. It's the human spirit that refuses to give up, no matter the odds. As they left the crucible behind, Zaxthor found himself reevaluating everything he thought he knew about warfare, about humanity, and about his own capabilities. He had come to Earth expecting to observe advanced weapons. Instead, he had discovered something far more powerful and terrifying. A species that could turn anything into a weapon, that thrived on chaos and adversity. And as they walked back towards the main facility, Zaxthor couldn't shake the feeling that this experience would change not just his own future, but the future of the entire Galactic Confederation. The humans, with their Deathworld-born ingenuity, were not just allies to be valued. They were a force to be reckoned with. A new perspective. The debriefing room was quiet as General Zaxthor settled into a chair that was clearly not designed for his alien physiology. Colonel Chen and Sergeant Major O'Neill sat across from him, their expressions a mix of curiosity and anticipation. "So, General," Chen began, her voice calm but tinged with interest. "Now that you've had some time to process everything you've seen and experienced, what are your thoughts?" Zaxthor's four eyes blinked in rapid succession, a sign of deep contemplation in his species. "I'm not sure I have the words to fully express it," he admitted, his translator struggling to convey the complexity of his emotions. O'Neill leaned forward, his scared face serious. "Give it a shot, sir. Your perspective is valuable to us." The alien general took a moment to gather his thoughts. "When I arrived on Earth, I expected to see advanced weaponry, cutting-edge technology that could explain your species' surprising success against threats like the cracks. Instead, I've witnessed something far more terrifying." Chen raised an eyebrow. "Terrifying. That's an interesting choice of words." Zaxthor nodded, his antennae twitching. "Yes, terrifying. Not because of any specific weapon or tactic, but because of what I've realized about humanity itself." He paused, looking at each of the humans in turn. "Your species, you're all living weapons. Every human, not just your soldiers, has the potential to become a lethal force with whatever is at hand. It's not about the tools, it's about the mindset." O'Neill grinned, but there was a hint of grimness in his expression. "That's the thing about evolving on a death world, General. You either learn to adapt, or you don't survive long enough to leave the planet." Chen nodded in agreement. "Our history is filled with examples of humans overcoming seemingly insurmountable odds through sheer ingenuity and determination. It's ingrained in our culture, our myths, our very DNA." Zaxthor leaned back, his exoskeleton creaking slightly. "I think I understand now why the Galactic Confederation was so eager to bring Earth into the fold. You're not just allies, you're a deterrent." "How do you mean?" Chen asked, though her tone suggested she already knew the answer. "The mere threat of human involvement in a conflict would give any potential aggressor pause," Zaxthor explained. "Who would want to face an enemy that can turn the very environment against you? An enemy that thrives on chaos and unpredictability." O'Neill's grin widened. "Now you're getting it, sir. Conventional warfare goes out the airlock when humans are involved." Zaxthor's mandibles clicked in agitation. "But don't you see how dangerous this makes you? How do the other species in the Confederation know you won't turn these abilities against them?" Chen's expression turned serious. "That's a fair concern, General. But consider this. Despite our capacity for violence, humans have a strong moral compass. We fight fiercely to defend ourselves and our allies, but we're not conquerors. We've seen enough of our own history to know the cost of unchecked aggression. Besides," O'Neill added, "we're too busy fighting each other half the time to think about galactic domination." Zaxthor wasn't sure if the scarred human was joking or not. "What will you tell the Confederation?" Chen asked, her eyes fixed on the alien general. Zaxthor was quiet for a long moment. The truth, he finally said, that Earth's strength lies not in its technology or conventional military might, but in the adaptability and resourcefulness of its people. That humans are simultaneously the most terrifying and the most valuable allies we could hope for in the face of cosmic threats. He straightened in his chair, a new resolve evident in his posture. I will also recommend that the Confederation invest heavily in cultural exchange programs with Earth, not to learn your weapons or tactics, but to understand your way of thinking. Perhaps some of that human adaptability can be taught. O'Neill and Chen exchanged a look, a silent communication passing between them. That's a wise decision, General, Chen said, standing up. We look forward to closer cooperation with the Confederation. As they prepared to leave the debriefing room, O'Neill placed a hand on Zaxthor's shoulder. A gesture that would have seemed presumptuous just hours ago, but now felt almost companionable. One last thing, General, the scared human said, his voice low. Everything you've seen here, it's just the tip of the iceberg. Humanity has a lot more surprises up our sleeves. Zaxthor felt a shiver run down his spine, but it wasn't entirely unpleasant. As he made his way back to his ship, preparing for the long journey home, he found his mind racing with the implications of what he had learned. The galaxy was a vast and often hostile place, filled with threats both known and unknown. But for the first time since joining the Galactic Confederation, Zaxthor felt genuinely optimistic about the future. With humans as allies, adapting their Deathworld-born ingenuity to the challenges of space, perhaps any threat could be overcome. As his ship lifted off from Earth's surface, Zaxthor took one last look at the blue-green planet below. It looked so peaceful from orbit, belying the fierce and endlessly creative species that called it home. Deathworlders indeed, he murmured to himself, a new respect evident in his voice. The galaxy won't know what hit it. With that thought, his ship engaged its faster-than-light drive, streaking away towards the stars, and towards a future that, thanks to humanity's unlikely alliance, suddenly seemed a lot brighter.